Welcome to UC Today. My name's David Dungay. We are here reporting live from Enterprise Connect. I'm with the infamous Zeus Kerravala. Welcome back to the show, Zeus. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here. Love coming to the show, and always love being on UC Today.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to talk about some of the big announcements and trends and themes of the show this year. I want to start with the big one, AI. It is absolutely everywhere.
I haven't heard of it.
You haven't heard of it?
Well, I've heard rumors of it, yeah. In fact, if ChatGPT hadn't come out before the show, I really wonder what these vendors would announce, because generative AI has dominated a lot of the announcements here.
Well, let's try and cut through some of that hype. You know, what are you seeing? You know, are we actually linking AI with those business outcomes? You know, what were your experiences here at the show?
Yeah, I think the theory and the ideas of what the vendors are trying to do is right? Be able to combine communications information with other information to make smarter decisions. The problem I see with it is I'm not sure most businesses have good enough data in order to integrate with communications to do that, right? And so, for example, you look at the RingSense announcement. It's combined. I'm going to combine my Ring info with Zoho and Salesforce and ServiceNow and all these great applications, and I'm going to provide some great insight to my sales team and to my customer success team, right? But how many companies do you know that love their Salesforce data, right? You know, a company I used to work for when I worked at Yankee Group, our sales guys, they just put in there, met with customer, right? And so from that standpoint, I think where AI could really have a big impact actually is initially as an input mechanism. So when I do a call with you, an AI can listen to it, summarize the meeting, put it in CRM, update the record. You can do it with contact center regions. You can do that with with salespeople, customer success, whatever. But you could actually use AI to create a better data set. And so, in theory, right, good AI leads to better AI down the road. Because I think right now, like I said, I just don't know if most businesses actually have the data or data discipline inside to do that with.
Yeah, I mean, you get out of it what you put into it from a data perspective, right?
Yeah.
So, what about the ChatGPT stuff? What are you seeing there? Everyone seems to be rushing to integrate with ChatGPT. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it's less about ChatGPT and more about what's the impact that you can have with generative AI, right? And so if you have self-learning AI, there's a lot of really interesting potential. I was at Adobe Summit, right, and they're using generative AI to help content creators create stuff faster, right? And so the people have asked me, how do you see generative AI being used or ChatGPT being used in a business sense? But I could see it being used, like, for instance, if I was going to meet you later, I could ask, hey, whatever system I'm using, I'm meeting with Dave Dungay. What are 3 talking points? And it goes and looks at all of our data. Microsoft's Copilot is a good example of trying to do that. But again, it's based on a lot of that data. But I do think the ability for an AI to create data, be able to manage the data, and then refine the data, it has some pretty interesting implications. And so we're just scratching the surface of it. But I'm assuming next year we'll see a lot more. But I actually think that's there's a lot of implications on being able to use AI to improve the pre and post meeting experience. I think most of the vendors do a pretty good job in meeting, right? We have virtual backgrounds, we have transcription, we have translation capabilities. But what happens when the meeting's over? You and I hang up, and we're off and running, right? So, help me get meeting minutes out to people, help me prep for meetings, and that's where I see this stuff having a big impact.
I want to revisit one of your predictions from earlier in the year around hybrid work. I think hybrid work is going to be a disaster this year. That was the prediction.
Yeah.
This Enterprise Connect is always a great litmus test for that, right? What are you seeing from a hybrid work perspective?
It's a disaster, right? And part of it is, look, a lot of the innovations from the companies, Cisco had some great innovation of multi-camera rooms and stuff. That's all fine and dandy. But the problem is companies don't know how to implement hybrid work. Some organizations are doing, you must come in 3 days a week. Other ones have people come in shifts. Other ones have new employees come in. And so there's no real best practices around hybrid work. And, I know the theory of make the office a magnet, not a mandate. But most CIOs I talk to, their companies have mandated it, right? And so for companies to have tried it, for instance, I was talking to the CIO here that said they were at a bank and they said they built two of those new collaborative rooms out and nobody uses them. And then I started asking, well, did you have really a collaborative culture before? And he said, well, no. It's like, well, then why do you think just because it's not an if you build it, they will come, right? Just because you built some rooms doesn't mean people are going to use it. And so I think for hybrid work to be successful, the vendors have, like I said, they've come out with some great innovation. but now they have to take a step back and help their customers understand how to use them properly, when to use them. And I was talking with Snorra Jesbu, the SVP at Cisco, and he said the way Cisco has thought about it is they want people to come in when they're doing innovation, mentoring, co-creation, right? Those type of use cases. So if you're coming in to just sit on your Zoom calls, don't come in, right? But you must come in for the right reasons. And I think companies are still struggling with what those reasons are.
Absolutely. So Enterprise Connect, it seems to evolve a little bit every year. We've seen a few businesses this year leading with the contact center element. Tell us, what are you thinking about that? How are you seeing that evolve?
Yeah, I'm seeing a big shift here this year especially. Like at 8x8 said their XCaaS would be contact center first. WebEx spent a lot of time in the keynote, more time in the keynote this year talking about contact center than maybe any other year ever, right? Microsoft said they have plans to go. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I think, first of all, I do think UC's not quite a commodity yet, but close to becoming that. You look, vendors keep adding features to their product, but they're not charging more, right? And what I'm hearing from the field is now that a lot of the COVID contracts are coming up, that's a term that's being used. 2-3 years since COVID. The vendors are having to do a lot of discounting because it's very competitive. And so if the economic value in UC is limited, where is the economic value in communications? And I do think that's in contact center, because contact centers, you deal with customers, you deal with sales, right? And so the impact that you can have in an organization is much bigger. And so I think a lot of the AI capabilities being built in the contact center are chargeable items. And I think you could potentially see the ARPUs on contact center grow. And also the contact center is growing a footprint in account. It's not just agents anymore. Anybody who's customer facing is using contact center. And so for that reason, I think you are seeing a pivot that way to more companies being contact center led, and I'll pull in UC versus the other way around before, where we UC led and then we pulled in CCaaS.
It's certainly going to be an interesting 6 months. Those COVID contracts, as you said, it's going to be a bit of a shake-up potentially in the industry. We could see some interesting developments over the next 6 months. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think so, right? If you look at all especially in your region, right? I mean, every country's got their own small UCaaS vendor and CCaaS vendor. Right now, I think it's fair to say there's more supply than there is demand. Clearly, if you look at the capital markets, the evaluation of the publicly traded companies, Ring, Zoom, Five9, they're all worth less today than they were pre-pandemic. And that's a statement from the investors saying, we don't really see the growth, right? And so if you have more supply than demand, that happens. And so I think there is some consolidation that's needed. There's a massive legacy base of people that still haven't moved to cloud that, when I talk to them, aren't really convinced they need to move to cloud. And so there's some rationalization that has to happen there. But I do think over the next year or so, we will likely see some shakeup. So, hopefully sooner than later. And that's good. That creates a healthier environment for everybody.
Zeus, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure to be here, Dave.
And thank you for watching. You've been watching me, David Dungay, on UC Today.